Welcome back to Niagani. We're still in the discussion of Belanjawan 2025, where companies are increasingly pressured to be more transparent about tax amid rising stakeholder expectations around disclosure and the perennial data challenge. And in addition to PwC Malaysia's Public Listed Companies Transformation PLCT program, the development of the Tax Corporate Governance Framework TCGF by the Inland Revenue Board Malaysia IRBM is response to these rising standards around governance, prompting a greater awareness around tax risks and controls among organizations. And with the recent rollout of e-invoicing, what are tax corporate governance's implications around transparency and tax administration? And what is the narrative for leaders in this current climate? And do companies have sufficiently enriched data for technology-enabled cooperation between taxpayer and also authorities? So to enlighten us, we have Pauline Lum, the tax partner PwC Malaysia, joined us virtually. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nabila. Thanks for having me.
No problem. This morning. Firstly, maybe Pauline, can you share on good governance is vital in today's corporate environment? So how is the government encouraging this among taxpayers amid a greater push for transparency? Pauline.
Thanks for that. So I think when we look at what the government has taken many measures to sort of push broader corporate governance. So tax is just one subset of that. And if you think about cooperative compliance, which is really a good relationship between taxpayers as well as our tax authorities, you'll see different subcomponents. So let me just quickly touch on some of them. So for example, if you think about data collection, which is where we have this whole introduction of e-invoicing, and we've successfully gone live on the 1st of August. This is just pulling good information so that you have better levels of comfort when you make a disclosure. And then you move into things like tax governance. So the point here would be you need to have good controls in place to give you that level of security and accuracy and comfort in relation to the data that you are collecting. And then of course that floats very nicely into sustainable actions as well. So broadly, when we think about the PLCT and we think about the TCG program initiated by the government, we also see some other initiatives like SVDP, where you can come forward in terms of making voluntary disclosures so that you can close off any open-ended areas with the tax authorities, as well as pushing for better quality in terms of data collection via e-invoicing, and others to come, as we may see with the budget fast approaching on Friday.
Can you explain as well on what measures are needed to promote compliance among not just taxpayers but business as a whole, and how does the recent rollout of e-invoicing actually help in this matter?
Thanks for that. So I think for those companies, congratulations for you who have gone live on 1st of August. What you would have noted as part of that journey is it's not just a tax conversation, but it's actually impacted the whole organization. So what I mean by that is there's had to been a look through in terms of accounting standards, accounting process. So if you think about accounts payable, accounts receivable, there needs to be some changes and controls put in place so that you're being able to collect better quality data in order for you to put forward the information that the revenue is looking to collect. So this really leads to a bigger perspective when it comes to collection of data. And when you think about how businesses have been reinventing themselves as well in order to meet the different requirements, be it sustainability indices, be it better corporate governance and enterprise risk management requirements, you'll also see that this overall alignment in terms of business process is definitely a step in the right direction, because tax is just one of the many business units within an organization, and everything has to move together in sync, and it's not to be viewed in silo.
We know that e-invoicing has been the talk of town in recent weeks, which is still very recent. So with some quarters commenting that the implementation timeline is too short, in your opinion, Pauline, what does this convey about the level of readiness for more efficient tax administration in the future?
So I think, Nabila, if we liken it to maybe three groups that we're seeing, if you think about those who run 100 meters, versus those who do a 200 meter, which is a bit more of a sprint, and those that do long distance running, the 400 meters. The approach that each type of runner would take would be slightly different based on the requirements that they have. So just floating that back to e-invoicing and the deadlines that we have, which was the 1st of August, and then we see one coming up in January, and of course 1 July, when everyone will start moving into that space. The question is, which type of runner are you? and what is your level of readiness, and how have you leveraged off other organizational changes or initiatives to make sure that everything is aligned. So I think in terms of readiness, Nabila, it really comes down to which approach that you would be taking in terms of which runner you are from a company perspective. And I think that whether we are looking at a timeline of today, tomorrow, it really comes down to the readiness that you already have in place, aligned with other initiatives within your organization.
Now let's talk about the TCG, or the Tax Corporate Governance Program. How well is the take-up of the tax right now of TCG? And in your opinion, will more companies participate in the program following the recent recognition of 7 pilot companies with TCG status at the recent Inland Revenue Board Award ceremony? Pauline?
Yes, so Nabila, I think what we saw in the pilot period was very encouraging. So whilst we have already 7 who have gone forward and they've been awarded the status, that was in June this year, there were also many other companies that came forward to raise their hands to say that they would also like to be part of this program. I think the interesting observation is, whilst this is a voluntary program, it is a program that is still being considered by many, purely because there are many trigger factors to it. So as I mentioned earlier, when you think about cooperative compliance and how governance and everything floats together, there could be other things, drivers like ESG. So not many people think of tax in the G component of ESG, so under governance. So we see a lot more in terms of sustainability indices, also having the tax transparency dimension sitting within the assessment of that requirement. We also see a lot more guidance. So there's also a big push in relation to other areas that could be, for example, sustainable financing, or just as part of an overall organizational shift in terms of how they are reassessing their model, aligning their business process, as well as aligning their overall enterprise risk management requirements. So will there be more coming forward? I do believe that there are quite a few that have already come forward in this second phase. And I think the revenue and others are going to be quite busy looking as we, again, link back to things like the PLCT, where we're talking about more disclosures to build better trust and transparency.
Pauline, we have about 3 minutes left. We need some kind of anticipation whether will the tax corporate governance, or TCGF, actually really move the needle in promoting ethical behavior and fostering trust, or is it just solely focusing on compliance? And what can we actually learn from more mature economies that are leading in TCG efforts?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because TCG is more than compliance. It's about putting in better controls so that you can collect, as you mentioned at the start of this discussion, better quality data for all types of reporting, including tax requirements and obligations. And as a result of the shift in better controls, there will also be a cultural shift that leads, of course, to more ethical behaviors, as you've outlined here. And we've seen this in a lot of the countries that have already onboarded in terms of tax corporate governance. And we've seen that there will be higher levels of comfort as everything links back to also better risk management, which is aligned with what we're looking at in terms of better trust and transparency, that links back to whether it's sustainability indices, ESG, you're looking at Bursa's public listed company transformation program. It's all about building better levels of trust in the disclosures that companies are making for all their stakeholders.